Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart has been one of the PS5's most anticipated games since it was revealed alongside the console. Being one of the PS5's first big exclusives, there were a lot of expectations on Rift Apart, and fortunately, Insomniac Games have once again managed to deliver the goods. Rift Apart is easily one of the best looking games I've ever seen, and it's an absolute joy to play. It's also the PS5's most next-gen feeling game yet. Rift Apart picks up after the events of the criminally underrated Ratchet & Clank Into the Nexus, at a parade celebrating all of Ratchet & Clank's past heroics. This was such a great way to open this game. You make your way through floats and displays themed around Ratchet & Clank's prior adventures, which lets Rift Apart's opening celebrate the past while also feeling like the beginning of a new era for the series. Of course, the celebrations don't last too long, and the villainous Dr. Nefarious shows up to ruin the day, tearing reality itself open and sending our heroes on a multiverse-hopping adventure. But it's not just Ratchet & Clank who are along for the ride this time. In Rift Apart, you'll also be playing as Rivet, a female Lombax who's one of Ratchet's multiverse equivalents, and she's voiced by none other than FemShep herself, Jennifer Hale. The entire opening sequence of Rift Apart is a massive visual spectacle that shows off all of the PS5's unique bells and whistles. In terms of moment-to-moment gameplay, Rift Apart will feel very familiar if you've played prior games in the series. So if you don't like previous Ratchet games, Rift Apart isn't likely to win you over. However, if you are a Ratchet fan, Rift Apart feels like the series at its apex, a masterful refinement of everything that's given the series such longevity. Like previous Ratchet games, Rift Apart has a strong emphasis on combat, as you juggle Rift Apart's wonderfully weird arsenal of weapons. Ratchet & Clank games have always been known for their absurdly creative lineup of weapons, and Rift Apart has the series' best selection yet. Nearly every gun in Rift Apart is satisfying to use, and they only get more interesting when you start experimenting with unique ways to combine these weapons' effects. All your weapons also level up as you use them, and as they get stronger you'll be able to spend raritanium, a currency found all over the environment, to unlock new improvements and abilities for your weapons. I really love how freely Rift Apart doles out raritanium. It means that you can upgrade every weapon without worrying that you're wasting resources on a weapon that you might not end up using much down the line. It's also nice that Ratchet and Rivet's weapons and upgrades are entirely shared, so you don't have to level up the same weapon multiple times. Rift Apart does an exceptional job of sprinkling in new weapons along the way, so you always have something new to play around with. There's even a couple of very cool weapons that you can only get in challenge mode, Rift Apart's version of New Game Plus. Among my favourite weapons in Rift Apart are the Negatron Collider, which shoots a powerful and wide-ranging beam of energy, the Topiary Sprinkler, which transforms enemies into plants, rendering them helpless and immobile as you pepper them with fire, and the explosive Shatter Bomb, which is a weapon I'd focus on levelling up as fast as possible, as it can quickly tear through hordes of weaker enemies. There are of course plenty of other awesome weapons, including some other favourites of mine that I won't spoil as you don't get them until further into the game. With games like Marvel's Spider-Man and Sunset Overdrive, Insomniac have proved time and time again that they can make moment-to-moment traversal engaging and satisfying in a way that few developers can, and Rift Apart certainly follows this trend. In fact, I'd say it controls as perfectly as a game can. The magnet boots, grapple, and hover abilities are all unlocked from the jump and are as fun to use as ever, but it's Rift Apart's brand new traversal mechanics that really help elevate Rift Apart to new heights for the franchise. Throughout Rift Apart, you'll regularly come across portals in the environment called tether points. Tapping L1 when facing a tether point allows Ratchet and Rivet to pull themselves to the tether point in an instant. This is one of the new mechanics that's made possible by the PS5's SSD, and it makes navigating environments quicker and easier than ever. Other new abilities introduced in Rift Apart include a wall run and the Phantom Dash, which allows Ratchet and Rivet to not only dash out of the way of incoming attacks, but also phase through certain barriers. It's also got one of the best looking animations I've ever seen, but the biggest game changer for traversal introduced in Rift Apart is the hover boots. Once you acquire these, you'll be able to quickly zoom across environments by holding down R1, and you can even gain additional speed by tapping L2. The rocket boots feel amazing, and they make navigating large environments a breeze. Overall, I know we've come to expect great feeling movement in Insomniac games, but it can't be understated how fun simply navigating the world of Rift Apart is, thanks to the gameplay's fantastic feeling of momentum. Rift Apart sees you exploring 9 different worlds, each filled with plenty of side activities to complete. When you land on a new planet, the map starts out entirely blank and gets coloured in as you explore. This is a simple but really effective way to reward exploration and help you find areas where there are likely collectibles that you haven't yet found. And it's definitely worth finding these different collectibles as they offer tangible and worthwhile rewards. The main form of collectible in Rift Apart is gold bolts. These gold bolts reward you with a bunch of different cosmetic unlocks, like new skins for your weapons, screen filters, and even the ability to reskin the bolts you're constantly picking up. You can even change them to look like cans of Overdrive from Sunset Overdrive. There are also rifts hidden around the map that you can tear open to access pocket dimensions. These provide fun little platforming challenges, and completing them rewards you with new armour pieces that Ratchet and Rivet can equip for various buffs. Rift Apart's worlds aren't only breathtaking to look at, they're also impeccably well designed, allowing for countless opportunities to utilise all of your gadgets in fun and interesting ways. One of Rift Apart's planets features a combat arena. This allows Rivet to fight waves of enemies in exchange for different rewards. I really liked the arena. Not only did it provide useful rewards like armour pieces, it also provides another fun excuse to experiment with all the weapons in your arsenal and level them up some more. Occasionally you'll take a break from playing as Ratchet or Rivet and instead briefly play as Clank or a little robot known as Glitch. In Glitch's sections, you'll be hacking things by shooting enemies and destroying nodes in the environment. Glitch's sections are simple but enjoyable, and they're brief enough to never become boring or tedious. Clank's sections, on the other hand, are probably my least favourite part of Rift Apart. The moments where you play as Clank see you solving puzzles and navigating environments by throwing different coloured orbs into slots. These orbs can increase movement speed, decrease gravity, or change the weight of an object passing through them. I didn't find these sections to be particularly fun, and they're all too easy to present any interesting challenge. While these sections aren't bad by any means, they also don't add anything meaningful to Rift Apart. Fortunately, these sections aren't really an issue though, as Rift Apart gives you an option to skip all of Clank and Glitch's sections if you're bored by them. The highlight of Rift Apart is easily its spectacular portal-based set pieces that see you being rapidly flung through different dimensions. This is something that I've never experienced in a game before, and it's a great example of the kinds of new mechanics that'll be possible this generation thanks to the new consoles all implementing SSDs. There's been a bit of chatter about Rift Apart's length, and if it should be longer. I'd say for me personally, Rift Apart's runtime was perfect. It probably took me 8 or 9 hours to finish the main story, and double that to get the platinum. Rift Apart has almost no downtime, and it's a near perfectly paced game. So I think it's hard to complain about the length of an experience when the quality is so high. I'd rather have a slightly shorter but immaculately paced game than a game that's needlessly padded out with boring busy work. Rift Apart also features the best story and writing in a Ratchet game yet. It's surprisingly heartfelt and often genuinely funny, and there's some unexpectedly meaningful story beats and character development throughout Rift Apart. Ratchet and Clank themselves remain as charming and endearing as ever, and Rivet is such a great new character and a very welcome addition to the cast. I liked Rivet from the jump, but by the time Rift Apart finished, I'd grown to like her every bit as much as the titular heroes. That's an impressive thing, seeing as I've spent over 10 games playing as Ratchet and Clank, and I love them as characters as well. Rivet also has a great character design. Her goggles, purple fur and robotic arm really give her a distinct and cool look. I really hope we see more of Rivet in future Ratchet games, because to me, she now feels as integral to the cast as Ratchet and Clank themselves. Of course, with Rift Apart being a multiverse story, you can expect to see multiverse equivalents of other characters from the Ratchet series, but I won't spoil these as they weren't promoted as heavily in marketing as Rivet was. Rift Apart offers 3 modes to play in: Fidelity, which favours visuals, Performance, which focuses on keeping the game running smoothly, and Performance RT, which lets the game run at 60 frames per second with ray tracing. Performance RT feels like the perfect balance to me, and it's how I chose to play this. This option was excellent in Miles Morales, and it's every bit as good here. Rift Apart is by far the best showcase of what the PS5 is capable of that we've seen yet. It's stunningly beautiful, with flawless lighting, richly detailed environments, ridiculously impressive texture work, and some of the best ray tracing implementation I've ever seen. Ratchet and Rivet's fur looks incredible. In fact, I never even equipped helmets for them because of how impressive the fur textures were. When they're that obscenely detailed, it felt like a shame to cover it up with a helmet. It's become a cliche to say that a game looks like a Pixar movie, but in this case, it's 100% true. Rift Apart is a masterclass in how to use the DualSense's adaptive triggers and haptic feedback. There's a moment early on in Rift Apart where you go to a nightclub, and during this section, you can feel the beat of the music pulsating through the DualSense. And the adaptive triggers help give each weapon a distinctive feeling. Like in Returnal, what your weapon does is predicated on whether you push the trigger halfway down or all the way down. For example, one gun fires faster the further down you pull the trigger, while the shotgun fires one shot for a half pull, or 2 simultaneous shots when you push the trigger all the way down. I really love when developers come up with thoughtful ways to use the DualSense. Insomniac are one of the best developers in the world, and they've rapidly become one of the most, if not the most important studio in Sony's stable of teams. They've developed 2 of the PS5's best games so far with Rift Apart and Spider-Man Miles Morales. While Rift Apart doesn't entirely reinvent the Ratchet franchise, it does present the series' most refined entry yet. Rift Apart joins the likes of A Crack in Time as one of the best Ratchet & Clank games yet. Rift Apart is an absolute delight all around, and it's one of the biggest reasons to own a PS5. It's also an early frontrunner for Game of the Year 2021. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, or leave a comment. You can also find countless other reviews on my channel, and be sure to stay tuned for my upcoming reviews of Biomutant, Mario Golf Super Rush, and Scarlet Nexus.